stretch of road, Emily attempted conversation from the back seat. "It's nice to finally meet you," she said. "Will we be working together much?" But Eve didn't reply, and 17 minutes later he still hadn't said a word, so she resigned herself to gazing out of the window in silence. Road signs flashed by. Avenue de Cordouan, Boulevard de Ponteillac, Rue de Platane. She tried them out, rolling the sounds around in her mouth. L'Île du Nil, Saint-Marc-de-Fontaine, Beaulieu-les-Marais. They tasted like poetry. Green fields were punctuated by yellow sunflowers and rust-red roofs. White stone walls ran over hills striped with neat rows of grapevines. She saw farmhouses, rivers, and tall spindly trees, pointed spires, crumbling churches, and, in the far distance, a thin blue stripe of ocean. Gradually the roads became narrower and the trees became thicker. Then, with no warning at all, Eve swung the car onto a dirt track. Leaves brushed the sides of the car like fingers, and branches reached out to one another overhead, forming a tunnel of green. The bonnet dipped low as the track sloped downhill, giving the impression that they were burrowing deep into the earth. They drove through increasingly dense woodland for what felt like hours. Twigs tapped at the windows and snapped under the tires, and Emily tried to remember if the Frenchman had produced any actual evidence that he was who he said he was. Kicking herself, she realized that she hadn't thought to verify his identity. She'd just followed him to his car and strapped herself in. Her breath became shallow. She watched the man who called himself Eve. His eyes were locked on the road, his jaw clenched tight as he navigated the potholes. Furtively, she checked her phone. No service. It became dark in the car as the canopy grew thicker and daylight gave up trying to break through. Emily wondered how much further they would or could drive. Surely they would hit the ocean at some point. She twisted in her seat to search for signs of civilization, but the view through the back window was even less reassuring than the one in front. The land looked as if it had never seen a fence, let alone roads or buildings. They were in the middle of nowhere. Finally, just as she began to weigh up the pros and cons of throwing herself from a moving vehicle, they began to slow. Peering through the windscreen, Emily spotted rods of black iron up ahead. A gate. As they came closer, she could make out letters in the design. "Carencia," she read aloud. They pulled up next to a gleaming security panel, and Eve opened his window, reaching through to punch buttons on a small keypad. "Voilà," he said, startling Emily so much that she jumped. "We have arrived." There was a buzz and a clank, and as the gate slowly parted, Emily's mouth fell open, all thoughts of escape melting away. A wonderland of colour and sweet floral smells seemed to spill through the gap like paint. Purple petals, emerald leaves, pink blossoms, orange butterflies, all pouring out of a pure blue sky. Even the lights seemed different from any she'd ever seen before. The SUV lumbered onto a sandy driveway. Rolling down her own window, Emily stuck her head out, eager to absorb as much as possible. Cicadas chirruped steadily from their hiding places, and somewhere to her right she could hear chickens clucking as well as a thin, plaintive cry. A sheep, maybe? Pathways snaked off between sprays of lavender, and a hammock swung lazily next to a cluster of tomato plants, each one bursting with bright red fruit. Ahead, through branches and foliage, she glimpsed the sparkle of a pool, and beyond that, yet more water, darker and flecked with white. And then 2 houses rose out of the flora, one on either side of a sprawling circular lawn. 2 huge whitewashed castles, standing sentinel over a fairy kingdom. Emily gave a low whistle as the car came to a stop. She could feel it already. This was the kind of place where things could be different, where she could be different. "What is this place?" she breathed. "You like it?"